To introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to welcome Dr. Dennis Jacobs, our provost at Fordham University. Dr. Jacobs joined Fordham in July 2019. He has a long and storied career in higher education, and he's no stranger to Jesuit education. He was a professor and administrator at the University of Notre Dame. Prior to Fordham, he was provost and vice president for academic affairs at Santa Clara University, a fellow Jesuit Catholic university. And in 2002, Dr. Jacobs was named U.S. Professor of the Year for Doctoral and Research Universities by Case and the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. In July 2019, he joined the Fordham community as Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dennis Jacobs.
Thank you, Megan. It was so inspiring to hear the various initiatives and insights expressed by academic leaders on our first plenary panel. The global community looks to schools of business now more than ever to educate students who are prepared to innovate in a rapidly evolving landscape of business. Fordham's mission as a Jesuit university calls the Gabelli School of Business to develop business leaders of creativity, character, integrity, and purpose, who not only discern the right thing to do when faced with an ethical dilemma or societal challenge, but have the courage and conviction to pursue it. As we reflect now on how the future of business education should be informed by industry perspectives, the conference agenda turns to the future of work. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jackie Canny, who will be delivering today's keynote address. Jackie is the Global Chief People Officer for WPP, a creative transformation company that builds better futures for its clients. She's responsible for leading all aspects of people strategy, rewards, talent management, recruiting, and leadership development and learning. Moderating today's keynote will be Monique Nelson. Monique is Chair and Chief Executive Officer of UWG, the country's longest standing multicultural marketing agency. Monique will be asking a number of questions of Jackie, and you are encouraged to submit your own questions by typing them in the Q&A box within Zoom. Please join me now in welcoming Jackie Canny and Monique Nelson.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for that introduction for Monique and I. I just want to add, I am also a Boston College grad, so I love the Jesuit representation out there. And I have a daughter who's a senior at BC and a senior in high school who I'm trying to nudge down one of those roads, but we'll see. Monique, could you just introduce yourself too? Because I think it's really important that the folks out there know your background.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I'm Monique Nelson. I'm the Chair and CEO of UWG and a proud partner of WPP. And excited to be here today to talk about not only the future of work, but all of the things that we believe are super important to what you'll need moving forward, and that this year has been really pivotal. So excited to kind of be steeped in this work. We think about culture first, and we think about the triumvirate of people, purpose, and performance together. So I'm just so excited to be here with you today, Jackie, to steward this conversation. But I would love to just kick off with, we've had quite a year, you and I even together, this 2020, as I've been coining, the year of clarity, right? We didn't necessarily like what we saw, but it was here, and we had a lot that we were doing. And I would love to just have you kind of open up with, managing, and you were the people person. So how did you manage? How did we manage to work through this and see ourselves through this, what we're calling the crisis?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Monique. And Monique has been my partner. You can tell we have been through this time together. I joined WPP in June 2019 from my role at Walmart, where I was there for 4 years. And when I started, I met Monique probably in my second week of work, where we were on a panel talking about diversity and inclusion and how important it is in this industry, with Mark Reed, our CEO, and Gail King from CBS. And I didn't know then what I know now in what would happen in the next year. So we set out to chart a course where WPP would be, we're the #1 marketing, media, and advertising agency. 1 in 3 ads that are placed is done by someone in our company. So recognizing having the best workforce was really important to the company, and the best being defined by, I would say, the most diverse and inclusive organization. But nothing became more clear, as you said, Monique, as the year went on, that would be absolutely the case. We had the virus and the pandemic come across the world, and we were in a situation where all of our people, 100,000, we put to remote work in March. And safety first was absolutely our #1 concern. But there was also concern for how would the business continue. We're a creative agency. All of the action happens in that now conference room behind Monique is gone. So how are we going to work together? And I'm really proud of how our people came together, and our leaders with our clients, to continue to build work, but be safe with our people. But then probably almost, I would say, even more impactful to me, second pandemic, was when the murder of George Floyd was broadcast to the world. And while there were so many others that have died and been murdered, that moment in this company, I think, really pushed us to think, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And our people agenda was built around 3 pillars. It was be the employer of choice, modernize, and build a talent pipeline. Well, since June, when our CEO was very vocally committed to anti-racism and knowing we are a people-led business, we've, built down, at least tripled down on what our people strategy is. And I am really proud of the commitments that he made publicly, where the first is signing on to the call for change with other Black advertising leaders that ask for things like a top to bottom review of our HR processes. A second large commitment to using our voice to stop racism and remove stereotypes. And then the third being a financial commitment of $30 million to charities and training. And we're just getting started.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a lot. And I think a lot of organizations were really, timid, I think, around leaning into this. But I have to say, I'm so proud to be a part of an organization that really jumped in, feet first, and the deep end. And we had lots of conversations, in safe rooms, and really talking about being, vulnerable as leaders. And one of the things that, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the Accelerate platform is really about, we're building inclusive leaders as a new skill set. So would love to kind of get that from you as well.
Sure. Awesome. And please chime in, because Monique, you helped me with this plan. Accelerate is really our people strategy. And I mentioned the 3 pillars that we built on. So now, not just employer of choice, want to be the employer of choice for all people, and not just modernizing the experience here, but in modernizing an inclusive experience here, where data and insights drives our decision making, not just who you know or networks. And then the third pillar, which was talent pipeline, is now more around a learning agility and taking care of yourself, building your capability so you can build your team's capability, and really examining each part of the HR function, how we hire, who we promote, how we choose who we promote, how we reward, how we develop, just disintegrating them and bringing them back together in a more inclusive way by listening to our people, by learning from others, by learning from our clients, and then holding our leaders accountable. So it's not just about the goodwill of wanting to change this from a moral imperative, but it's good for business, and Mark sees that, and our board sees that, and they are being held accountable across, in turn, holding our leaders accountable to drive how they'll be paid in their incentives by how well they do on this work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, one of the keys is the fact that, we were all really committed to the fact that this was everybody's job, right? That, this imperative was really everyone's job. So we really, talked about it in a framework. We talked about our 3 A's, right? Which is kind of that acknowledge and assess, right? We want to, let's really be thoughtful about what are we trying to solve? And then, let's put some real strategic actions against that, right? And how quickly can we do them? But of course, we only treasure what we measure. So, that last A, that accountability that we speak of often and all the time is really, really critical. How do we hold people accountable, and not in a way that's punitive, but in a way that's additive and, value creative, and really making sure that people saw that there was more to our DE&I strategy that was about, being differentiator, being more creative, right? Like the more diversity that we had around those tables, those virtual tables now, was going to be even more impactful than we had imagined. So I love that. And I love that we also stood by our 4Bs. We wanted that key buy-in, right? At that C-suite level. Mark leaned in, you leaned in, no challenges around, hey, we know we've got to do something. We're going to put a stake in the ground. And that buy-in is critical, not only at the senior level, but then at that middle management level, right? That key level of people that do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? They make sure that the people below them are, doing what they need to get done, but then also making sure that the senior levels are informed. So we had to make sure that they were on board. Then we had to allocate budget, right? You can't do anything without it. We've got to put our money where our mouth is, and we've absolutely done that. Last, the third B is, making sure that we are branding, right? We're a creative agency. We've got to, put this out there. We have to put a campaign together so that everyone understands what we're trying to get done. Transparency was really important so that people understood where we were on the journey. And then, of course, the fact that it is a journey, that we want it to be built to last, right? Sustainability, is a key pillar now for where D&I should live and should be about the longevity of what we're trying to get done. So with that, I wanted to pivot a little.
Can I ask you one?
Sure. Oh.
It's not a keynote. Here we go. Monique, I think it would be great for you to talk about some of the client examples where you worked with us internally, but even more, I think, is how our clients were looking to us in this hour of need, and some of the great work that your team did.
Absolutely. I mean, we love to collaborate, and, clients, of course, came to us with, what do we say in this moment? And should we say something in this moment? We had lots of clients that were, willing to have that conversation. Dove being one of them, really making sure that, beauty did, transcend. And they made a very bold statement to say that, America was not beautiful, right? Until all of us can be, seen, heard, and protected, equally. Of course, our LVMH client, did some beautiful work, not only internally, but externally, really talking about the fact that they valued, this hidden, customer, and, a person that, may or may not have felt like they were, invited into their space. And they've taken some really amazing, bold moves across many of the maisons that they're working on now. And then our Ford client continued to lean in on the fact that they believe that not only should they be producing work in this time, but actually making sure that they put minority and women behind the camera, in front of the camera, that communities of color could be represented in this moment and uplifted in this moment. So very, very proud of, of our roster of clients, and certainly their ability to have a bold conversation in this moment. So, but I'm going to turn it back to you because it is yours. And I think this audience would love to hear, especially from a woman of your stature in this space, what's out there? What's the skills that we're looking for? What's that, future leader looking like? And how, how are they to be conducting themselves in this very uncertain and crazy time?
Sure. And I wish I had a crystal ball to make sure I get this right, but I'll give you my point of view. A few years ago, working at Walmart, I was thinking with Doug McMillon, the CEO there, around how do we prepare the workforce for the future? And we circled around a few key skills that I think have stood the test of time, even in this year, but it was to have the digital acumen, data-driven decision-making, a growth mindset with an open mind, and you can see that this capability to embrace technology was going to be important for a long time. But more than any of those skills, I think empathy was the one that we really leaned on. And as I reflect on this last year, I do think that empathy has probably been the one most required to be a leader, whether you're managing a team from home or a team from around the world that can't get together, or a client that doesn't know what to do, or people who are struggling with just this whole environment. That empathy above all is really the key. And where I would like to say the skills of the future are pointing, and I know I sit with a people hat, is that it's really inclusion that is the capability, the skill of the future, that all of you out there who are educators can, if you weave that into your curriculum and rise that up in your students, they will be the leaders of the future. And Frances Frei is a good friend of mine. She's a professor at Harvard Business School, and she talks about inclusion as a continuum where you need to feel safe and welcomed first. But the ultimate place you want your team to be is in the cherished and celebrated. So I think about, for WPP, if we had 100,000 people that we are working on our clients every day, producing those 1 in 3 ads, and they felt cherished and celebrated, what amazing work would be there, and what a fulfilling career that would be provided. So that's my crystal ball.
I love it. Agility, open-mindedness, inclusive leadership is ultimately where I think we all want to be. It's a continuous improvement model. And honestly, that's what the work is, right? It's a continuous process, and culture moves, humans move, but we definitely know that if we put people, purpose, and performance together, we can have a winning strategy. So I so appreciate spending this great time with you, my friend and colleague. And thank you everyone for hanging out with us for a little while. Really appreciate everything you're doing, and looking forward to seeing London when we finally can.
I don't know if we have time for questions, but Monique and I are here for a few minutes if that is something the group wants to do. Thanks, Monique.
We do have time for a couple of questions. One question here from Fang Wan: how do the messages the WPP creates for its clients reflect this equality, diversity, and inclusion mindset?
Well, Monique can talk practically how it shows up every day, but one of the commitments in the 3 I'll start with is to use our voice. And we've set up a group chaired by our global client lead to be a place to escalate if we have concerns around our work not standing next to our values, or even just to check their thinking. And we've been able to use our expertise, but also our experience to help teams see where they can help a client maybe pivot a little more, so that everyone's proud of the work that gets produced. But Monique, I'll turn it to you, and you do this every day.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we really look at the fact that insights and action and connection to the community is key, no matter what work you're doing, no matter where you are in the world. You see more advertising than you see anything else, if you can imagine, between your phone and, out of home and things along those lines. So it's really key, especially in this moment, that we be thoughtful around how we're connecting with our audiences and ensuring that everything has a lens of of cultural dynamic on it. So we're just working to make sure that that's prolific throughout the network, and giving people all the tools that we can to ensure that they're delivering, as we would say, globally, right? You may have a global value strategy, but we want to make sure that it's locally relevant. So there's many paths to positivity, and just making sure that everyone has the keys to get to the outcome that's going to be most important for them and their brand clients.
That's great. And we have time for just one more question. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about how you deal with the challenging situations or the challenging conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion that sometimes don't go as smoothly as we hope, and that we need to step in and rectify or adjust so that the situation doesn't spin out of control.
I am a big believer in meeting people where they are. I think that, you can be a world-renowned leader, you could be just out of school. Everybody comes with their experiences, their life experiences that shape how they approach complex problems. And here in the US, I think we all recognize the the turbulent times that we're in around the world, but I'm influenced obviously by living here. And I have always approached, it's about listening to what a leader's goals are, what are they trying to achieve, and then matching up to here's what your people are saying and wanting and needing and what your customers are talking about, and using evidence based to bring the mind as well as the heart into the conversation, and then walking them with grace through this time, because I think it's easier to judge and shut things down sometimes than to try to just bring along. I hope that answers the question, but I throw it back to you, Monique, if you have other things to add.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is just a time to lean on those skills around having hard conversations, and how do you find that ability to meet people, like Jackie says, where they are, but also ensure that you continue the conversation. So much is, lost when you don't express it. So, we're taking these moments as education, opportunities, an opportunity to, dismantle, maybe a stereotype or, an unconscious bias that we all have. It's part of our DNA, it's part of how we're built, but it is something that we can recognize, and ergo, we can change that behavior and change that outlook, especially in the workplace. It's critical that we all have a safe space to express ourselves and deliver our best selves. And we believe that that has to come through, dialogue.